The wind in Aethros did not whisper. It carried memory. Elara Vael had known that since childhood, long before she understood why certain hills hummed at dusk, or why some nights felt heavier than others. But tonight, the wind felt different. It carried heat, not enough to burn, just enough to warn. The Royal Archive of Darnith stood silent beneath a sky bruised violet by approaching storm. Stone towers leaned inward like conspirators, and between them hung iron lanterns, swaying in restless rhythm. Elara wasn't supposed to be here this late. Technically, she was never supposed to be here alone. But rules in Darnith were built for men who feared questions. And Elara had never feared questions. She lit a taper and descended into the restricted wing of the archive, a vaulted chamber that smelled of dust, ink, and old secrets, the forbidden shelf. Officially, it did not exist. Unofficially, it contained texts confiscated during border purges between the mortal provinces and the Ember Dominion. Most were propaganda. A few were myths. Only one had been whispered about in hushed tones among scholars, the ashen manuscript. The iron key felt colder than expected in her palm. She paused at the gate. Every instinct told her to walk back upstairs. Instead, she unlocked it. The hinges groaned softly, like something waking. Inside, rows of chained tomes sat untouched by sunlight, and there it was, black leather, no title, edges faintly singed. She reached for it. The moment her fingers brushed the cover, the air shifted, not metaphorically. Physically, lantern flames bent inward as though inhaling. The stone beneath her boots trembled. The manuscript was warm, not warm like cloth near fire, warm like a living pulse beneath skin. She swallowed. "It's just ink," she whispered. The cover opened without resistance. The first page bore a single sentence. "When flame kneels to shadow, the throne of ash will crack." Her breath stilled. She knew that line. Every border legend included it. It was prophecy. But no mortal record had ever confirmed its origin. She turned the page, and the temperature in the chamber rose sharply. Ink began to rearrange itself across the parchment, not forming words, forming a sigil, a mark shaped like interlocking flame and crescent. Her fingers tingled, then burned. She gasped and pulled back. Too late. The sigil flared once, imprinting light into her skin. Pain shot up her arm, bright and searing. Not destructive, binding. Above the archive ceiling, thunder split the sky. Miles away in the mountains of the Ember Dominion, Cale Thorn stopped mid-stride. The ember runes carved into his forearm, ignited like coals, suddenly fed air. For the first time in a century, they responded. Miles beyond the mortal provinces, past forests that did not decay, and rivers that steamed even in winter, the Ember Dominion rose from volcanic stone. Its mountains were not jagged. They were carved. Ancient and by immortals, mark bent heat like sculptors bend clay. Atop the largest of these peaks stood the citadel of House Thorn. And within it, Cale felt it, the mark. It burned beneath the carved runes in his forearm, flaring beneath skin that had not aged in 3 centuries. He did not flinch. Immortals of the Ember Dominion did not react to pain. They assessed it. He stood still in the training chamber, watching the glow pulse along his veins. A mortal, it had to be. Only mortal blood could trigger dormant sigils tied to the ancient prophecy. One of the wardens stepped forward cautiously. "My lord?" Cale lowered his arm slowly. "Leave." The single word was quiet, but the chamber cleared immediately. When alone, he turned his wrist and studied the ember mark now faintly illuminated beneath his skin. It had not responded. In 127 years, not since the last failed convergence, which meant one thing. The ashen manuscript had been opened, and not by accident. Back in Darnith, Elara gripped the edge of a stone table as the burning sensation in her palm dulled into warmth. The sigil faded from the air. but not from her skin. It remained imprinted along the inside of her wrist. Faint, copper-toned, impossible. Her first instinct was denial. Her second was fascination. The manuscript lay open, now blank. No sigil, no prophecy line. No reactive ink, just empty parchment. "I didn't imagine it," she whispered. No one answered, but something watched. She felt it the way one feels lightning before it strikes. A presence stretching across distance, not malicious, but aware. Suddenly, the archive door above slammed. Footsteps echoed from upper corridors. Guards. She shut the manuscript instantly and slid it back into place, chaining it as best she could before retreating into shadows between shelves. Torches flared outside the restricted wing. The head archivist's voice trembled in the corridor. Something triggered the southern wards. Wards? She hadn't known the archive even had them. Another voice answered, deeper, unfamiliar. That was no ward failure. Elara stilled completely. That voice did not belong to a mortal guard. It carried resonance. Weighted. Measured. Older than the room it stood in. Bootsteps descended the staircase. Not hurried, not cautious, deliberate. She peered carefully through a gap between chained tomes and saw him, not fully, just a portion, dark cloak, ember thread insignia at the shoulder, a silhouette too still to be human. The air seemed to bend slightly around him. Every guard instinctively kept distance. The archivist bowed lower than necessary. Lord Thorn. Elara's pulse stopped. Immortal. Here, in the mortal provinces, impossible. Kael's gaze drifted slowly across the shelves. He did not scan frantically. He felt. The mark on his arm guided him. Toward her. He stopped in front of the exact section she hid behind. No panic. He knew. Her breath was shallow. If he moved one step to the left, he would see her. But instead, he reached toward the shelf where the ashen manuscript rested. His fingers hovered just above it. He did not touch it. "The one who opened this," he said quietly, "did not understand the covenant." His voice did not echo. It carried. "It has been dormant for a century," the archivist whispered. "It is not dormant now." Elara's wrist flared faintly. Kyle's eyes shifted instantly. Downward, directly toward the narrow slit between tomes, toward her, not fear, recognition. That was worse. He took one step closer to the shelf and spoke, not to the guards, not to the archivist, but toward the shadows. "Come forward." Not a command shouted, a decree spoken calmly. Elara remained frozen. Her mind raced. If she stepped out, she exposed herself to a being who could unravel cities. If she ran, she might confirm everything. His voice lowered slightly. "You are not invisible to flame." Silence stretched between them. The guards looked confused. They saw nothing, but he saw enough. The mark on his arm burned brighter, and without raising his tone, he said the words that altered everything. "You carry my sigil." "You carry my sigil." The words did not strike like thunder. They settled into the space between them. Dense, unmovable. Elara stepped forward before she realized she had decided to. From between the chained shelves, from shadow into torchlight, the guards inhaled sharply. A mortal scholar. Alone. In restricted chambers. Standing 2 arm lengths from an immortal lord. Kael studied her the way one studies a phenomenon. Not with hunger. Not with cruelty. With calculation. "You opened it," he said. It was not a question. Elara swallowed, but kept her spine straight. "Yes." The archivist gasped faintly. One of the guards murmured, "Remove her." Kael lifted one finger. Silence obeyed. He did not look at the guards. He did not need to. His gaze remained fixed on Elara. "Extend your hand." She hesitated only a second before doing so. The copper-toned mark along her inner wrist faintly shimmered under torchlight. The room temperature rose subtly. A quiet inhale moved through the chamber. Kael stepped closer, not invading, but undeniable. His presence did not smother. It pressed. He reached out, slowly, and hovered his hand inches above her wrist. He did not touch her. Yet warmth surged between them anyway. The sigil flared briefly in response. The guards stumbled backward. The torches bent inward as they had before. And for one suspended moment, their eyes met. Not adversarial, not romantic, recognizing, he withdrew first. That mattered. "You are not trained," he said quietly. "You do not understand what this mark binds." "Then explain it," she replied before she could reconsider. The archivist made a strangled noise. Kael's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted. No mortal had addressed him like that in decades. "You have awakened a covenant between fire and mortal blood," he said. "And what does that mean?" "It means," he replied evenly, "you are now a fault line in a truce that has held for 127 years. That landed heavier than threat. A fault line. He turned slightly toward the archivist. "Seal the archive, my lord, now." Commands did not need volume. Within seconds, guards began ushering staff out of the lower halls. Elara's pulse pounded in her ears. "You can't just walk in here and, I can—" He said it gently, which somehow felt colder. Footsteps echoed above, not rushed, disciplined. Kael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Someone else had felt the disturbance, and they were coming. He looked back at her. "You will be sought," he said. "By who?" He paused. "Those who manipulate shadow, the veiled court." The name went unspoken. The air shifted again, cooler this time. Not heat. Absence of it. Kael glanced toward the stairwell. Not alarmed. Annoyed. "I do not have time to remove you from this province tonight," he said. "You were planning to?" she asked sharply. His gaze returned to her, unblinking. "You are not safe in ignorance." That was not menace. It was inevitability. Footsteps approached from above. Slower than mortal. Measured. Another presence descended. Kael's forearm glowed again beneath fabric. He stepped back half a pace. That was the first concession. "You must not use the mark," he said quietly. "I don't even know how—" "You will." Silence. Then, "Do not speak of me," he added. "People tend to notice when immortals visit archives," she said, for the first time. The faintest flicker of something like restrained amusement crossed his expression, but it vanished quickly. At the archway of the chamber, a new figure appeared, tall, dressed in deep charcoal and silver thread, hair pale, eyes unnatural. At the archway of the chamber, a new figure appeared, tall, dressed in charcoal layered with silver thread embroidery that shimmered faintly like distant starlight. Hair pale, eyes unnaturally light, not glowing, not theatrical, just wrong in the way winter air is wrong when it touches warm skin. Lucien Marr stepped into the threshold as though he owned silence itself. "Lord Thorn," he said smoothly, inclining his head just enough to be polite, not enough to concede rank. "I was not aware the Dominion conducted library inspections." The temperature shifted. Not heat, not flame, but cool pressure. Kael did not turn fully toward him. "You felt it," Kael replied. "I did." Lucien's gaze drifted lazily around the chamber until it landed on Elara, and lingered. Unlike Kael's examination, Lucien's was surgical, measured, curious. "Interested?" "Well," Lucien said mildly, "that explains quite a bit." Elara resisted the urge to step back. "You both speak as if I'm not standing here," she said. Lucien's lips curved slightly. "Oh, I assure you," he replied. "We are very aware of you." Cale's jaw tightened. Lucian walked forward slowly. The guards instinctively parted again. "You opened it," Lucian continued conversationally. "The ashen manuscript." "Yes," Elara answered. "Brave, dangerously so." Lucian circled her once, not touching, assessing. "And it answered you. It rearranged ink," she snapped. "That's all." Lucian's gaze flickered to her wrist. The faint copper sigil pulsed beneath her skin. "That," he said softly, "is never all." Kyle stepped between them without raising his voice. "She is under dominion notice." Lucian tilted his head. "How convenient. She is bound to flame," Kyle continued. "Or perhaps," Lucian countered, "she is bound to prophecy." Silence fell heavy. The prophecy line, "When flame kneels to shadow, the throne of ash will crack." Lucian stepped closer, but not toward Kyle, toward Elara. "Tell me," he said lightly, "did the manuscript whisper anything beyond the sigil?" Elara hesitated. "Just long enough." Lucian saw it. Kyle did too. "Enough," Kyle said. "Not loudly. Final." The sigils beneath his sleeve flared brighter. Lucian stopped smiling. For a fraction of a second, the air rippled visibly between them. Ancient power. Restrained by treaty. The archivist trembled against a wall. "Elara Vael," Lucian said gently, ignoring Kyle's heat. "You are now very interesting." That was not flattery. It was a warning. Footsteps echoed again. Mortal city guards this time. The disturbance had traveled beyond ancient senses. Politics now hovered dangerously near visibility. Kael measured the situation. 2 immortals in a mortal archive. A marked human. Witnesses. Escalation would ignite more than flame. He exhaled once, controlled, then looked at Elara. "You will be watched," he said quietly. "By which of you?" she asked. His eyes did not waver. "By both." Lucian smiled faintly at that. "Do not attempt to remove the mark," Kael added. "I wouldn't know how. You will—" He stepped back toward the stairwell, and for the first time, Elara felt something shift between them. Not romance, recognition. Like 2 pieces of something forged separately that had suddenly been placed too close together. Lucian's voice followed him lightly. "You cannot shield her forever, Thorn." Kyle paused at the top of the stairs. "I do not shield what is not mine." And then he was gone. Gone not theatrically. Just suddenly beyond mortal perception, ascending with impossible speed. The torches steadied. The chamber cooled. Lucian remained. That was worse. He faced her fully now. "You intrigue forces you do not comprehend," he said. "I opened a book. You opened a fracture." His eyes drifted toward her wrist once more. "Do not let him frighten you." "And you?" she asked. "Should I?" His smile returned, softer now. "That depends," he replied. "On what?" He did not clarify. The city guards finally flooded into the lower levels. Lucian straightened slightly. "Our paths will cross again," he told her quietly. Then his form seemed to thin at the edges, like fog dispersing under unseen wind. Within seconds, he was gone. The archive felt smaller immediately. Mortal. Elara stood alone. Except she was not. The mark pulsed once beneath her skin, not painfully, aware, somewhere beyond mountains. Kael stood at the balcony of House Thorn, staring toward the mortal provinces. For the first time in over a century, he felt something unstable in the covenant, and it did not feel like war. It felt like convergence, back in Darnith. Elara lifted her sleeve and stared at the sigil. It was brighter now, and when she exhaled, a faint spark flickered at her fingertips, gone instantly. "But real," she whispered into the quiet archive. "What did I just do?" The wind outside did not whisper. It answered, and in the distance, ash shifted beneath a throne long thought unbreakable. A CT2, Fracture lines. Act 2. Fracture lines. Elara did not sleep. Not truly. When she closed her eyes, she saw ember light beneath skin. She saw shadow pooling behind pale eyes. She saw the moment Kael had hovered his hand over her wrist, and the air had bent. By dawn, the mark no longer glowed, but it remained warm. Aware, Scene 1, the first loss. She returned to the archive before first bell, only to find the restricted wings sealed with Dominion sigil wax. A quiet message. Untouchable. The head archivist would not meet her gaze. "You're suspended," he muttered, "until further notice." For what? For attracting attention. Fear had a smell. The man reeked of it. She left without arguing, because arguing would confirm what no mortal was supposed to know. Immortals had walked their halls, and the Mortal Council would not ignore that. Scene 2, in the Ember Dominion, high in the carved mountains. Kael stood inside the hall of searing accord. Obsidian columns rose toward a ceiling, lit by molten channels of slow-burning flame. Across from him sat 3 elders of the Dominion, power layered in their silence. "You traveled beyond sanctioned territory," one elder said. "I contained a destabilization," Kael replied evenly. Scene 2. In the Ember Dominion, high in the carved mountains. Kael stood inside the hall of searing accord. Obsidian columns rose toward a ceiling, lit by molten channels of slow-burning flame. Across from him sat 3 elders of the Dominion, power layered in their silence. "You traveled beyond sanctioned territory," one elder said. "I contained a destabilization," Kael replied evenly. "The veiled court felt it. So did we." A pause. "And the mortal?" another elder asked. "Marked." Murmurs shifted across the chamber like embers stirred by wind. "That is impossible," one whispered. "It is done," Kael said. The eldest of them leaned forward slightly. "If prophecy activates through mortal blood, it fractures the treaty," Kael finished. "And you," the elder's eyes narrowed, "are tied to it." Kael did not deny it. He did not admit it either, and that silence held weight. "You were exiled from court influence for less disruption than this," one elder reminded him. Kael's voice cooled. "I was exiled for challenging stagnation. And now you threaten war? I prevent chaos?" The molten channels above pulsed faintly. Elder Flame responded to emotion. The eldest spoke again. "You are not to retrieve the mortal." Something in Kael's stillness sharpened. "Clarify," he said softly. "You will not bring her to Dominion soil." "Why?" He did not ask, because he already knew. Power attached to prophecy was safest under controlled distance. But distance was not control, and Kael did not like variables untethered. Scene 3. The veiled court moves. Far north, in a city carved not from stone but shadow itself, Lucian stood before the Council of Veils, their faces obscured by silver gauze. "The mark has chosen flame," one murmured. "No," Lucian corrected gently. "The mark has chosen her. That distinction is dangerous." Lucian's scar caught a faint glint of cold light. "Dangerous for whom?" "If flame kneels," another whispered. "Shadow gains throne." Lucian smiled slightly. "Unless flame refuses?" "And you?" the first asked carefully. "Will you interfere?" Lucian's fingers traced faint patterns in the air. Mist bent around his touch. "I will observe." The chamber grew colder. "Observation," one said dryly, "from you, Lord Mar, rarely means neutrality." He did not deny that either. Scene 4. The Spark. That night, Elara sat alone in her small apartment in Darnith. Windows open, storm air rolling through. She held her wrist under candlelight. "Nothing," she whispered. Nothing happened. Frustration rose. "I refused to be a pawn in some prophecy I didn't ask for." The mark pulsed faintly. Not in response to anger, in response to intent. She inhaled sharply. Heat bloomed through her palm. A small flicker sparked above her fingers. Bright, alive. She gasped and pulled back. The spark shot outward, striking the metal lantern across the room. The lantern bent inward, not melting, warping. Reality bending around heat. Elara stared at it. "This isn't possible." The door below her apartment slammed. Bootsteps in the stairwell, rapid, organized, not random. Her heart dropped. They had come faster than Kael expected. Mortal guards, or something else. The stairwell darkened briefly. Not from absence of flame, from swallowed light. A whisper slid beneath her door. Soft, almost amused. "You have been practicing." Elara froze. That voice. Lucien. The handle turned slowly. Not by force, by invitation. And somewhere, far across the mountains. Kael's forearm ignited again. He looked toward the mortal provinces. Too far, too restrained, bound by elder decree, and for the first time since exile. He felt something close to urgency. A CT2 continued. The shadow at the door. The handle turned slowly, not forced. Invited. Elara did not remember inviting anyone. But the door opened anyway. Lucien stepped into the threshold as if he had always belonged there. No guards behind him. No visible weapon. Just charcoal layered in silver thread embroidery that shimmered faintly like distant starlight whenever he moved. Shadows seemed to cling to him, not menacing. Curious. "You've accelerated faster than expected," he said mildly, closing the door behind him with a soft click. "I didn't ask for any of this," she snapped. "No one ever does." He moved toward the warped lantern across the room, examining it without touching. "You bent steel?" he continued calmly. "Without incantation, without training. I didn't mean to. That will not matter." His eyes shifted to her wrist. The mark pulsed faintly beneath candlelight. "Dominion flame is instinctual," he said quietly. "It reacts to emotion." "So this is his fault?" she shot back. Lucien's lips curved slightly. "You misunderstand. He didn't give this to you, but you are tied to him." She stiffened. "I am not tied to anyone." The faintest tilt of his head. "You are tied to the oldest law our world has." The air in the room cooled noticeably. Not oppressive. Almost steadying. He stepped closer, but not threatening. If anything, the space around her felt contained, shielded. Down below, boots echoed on cobblestone. Mortal guards, searching. Lucien glanced toward the window. "They are not here for you." "Then who? For rumors? About immortals? About instability?" He looked back at her. "You are standing at the center of something fragile. And what are you doing here? A beat, then preventing you from igniting it prematurely." That was not sarcasm. It was sincere, and that sincerity disturbed her more than menace would have. "Why would you care?" she asked. Lucien's scar caught candlelight as he studied her. "Because if Dominion reacts publicly," he said softly, "the mortal provinces fracture first. And you don't want war?" "Oh, I believe war is inevitable," he replied evenly. "I simply prefer timing to chaos." The mark flared faintly again. Heat rolled through her palm. Lucien's gaze sharpened. "Breathe," he instructed. "I am breathing. Not correctly." He stepped behind her, not touching, but close enough that she felt the shift in the air. "Dominion flame rises with emotion," he continued. "Shadow tempers it. Are you saying I need you?" A pause, then quiet. "For this moment." Her jaw tightened. Heat sparked again, brighter this time. The window glass trembled. Lucien exhaled slowly, and the shadows in the room lengthened, not to engulf, but to stabilize. The sparks dimmed. The trembling stopped. Elara blinked. "You suppressed it?" "No. I redirected it." She turned slowly to face him. "And why would you teach me that?" His expression shifted, almost unreadable, because, he said carefully, if you lose control in public, Dominion will be forced to claim you, and that would be bad. For you? Yes, for you. She pressed. A hint of something flickered in his eyes. Interest, possessiveness? No, not quite. Let us say, he replied, voice smooth, I prefer choices not dictated by Kyle Thorne. There it was, the rivalry. But beneath it, something else, concern, genuine. The knock below grew louder, mortal authority climbing the stairwell. Lucien stepped toward the door again. You need to leave, she said. He smiled faintly. I was never truly here. He paused at the threshold, then turned back once more. When the flame calls to you again, he said quietly, do not answer it without understanding the cost. What cost? His gaze dropped briefly to the mark. Every Dominion bond demands something in return. A beat. And what does Shadow demand? She asked. His scar caught moonlight. Honesty, he said. Then he was gone. Not vanished in smoke, not dramatic. Simply not present anymore. The knock reached her door. Hard, mortal guard, a voice barked. Open immediately. Elara inhaled once. Steady. This time, she managed not to let the flame rise. Meanwhile, Ember Dominion. Kyle stood alone in his private chamber, not seated, not resting, watching the faint glow along his forearm fade slowly. Someone had stabilized her. He could feel it. Not Dominion. Shadow. His jaw tightened. Lucian? He closed his hands slowly. The Elder's command echoed in memory. You will not bring her to Dominion soil. For the first time. He considered disobedience. Not impulsively, strategically, because if Lucien reached her first, the covenant might not merely fracture. It might shift allegiance, and Kyle Thorne did not kneel. Not to Shadow. Not to prophecy. Not to fate. But flame beneath his skin pulsed once in contradiction. A CT2 continued. The witnesses. The knocking turned into pounding. Mortal guard, the voice barked again. Open immediately. Elara stared at the door as if it might open itself and swallow her. Her apartment was too small for hiding. Too quiet for lies. She crossed the room, hands steadying on instinct rather than confidence, and opened the door. 3 guards filled the frame. Uniformed in gray leather, the city crest stamped in brass. Their torches made her walls look closer than they were. The lead guard's eyes moved past her shoulder, straight to the lantern on the table. Warped, bent inward, like something had tried to fold it with invisible fingers. His gaze hardened. Someone's been inside, he said. Elara's throat tightened. No one? The second guard stepped into the room without invitation. He saw the same thing and inhaled sharply. That's not heat damage, he muttered. Too clean. Elara forced her voice to remain level. It fell. It was old. The lead guard didn't blink. We're conducting searches. There are reports of disturbances in the archive. Her pulse spiked. So it had spread. Rumors traveled faster than law. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Name. Elara Vael. He recognized it immediately. Scholar, archive access. A name written in ledger ink. He glanced at his partner, and something passed between them. Hands, he said. Elara's mind went cold. If she raised her sleeve and they saw the mark, this would become more than a search. It would become a seizure, a public accusation of witchcraft, or worse. She lifted her hands slowly, palms out, sleeves still down. I'm not resisting, she said. Good, the lead guard replied. Then you won't mind if we inspect you for contraband. The second guard reached toward her wrist. Elara felt the mark respond before contact, a warmth blooming fast. Too fast. Not an ember. A flare. Lucian's warning flashed in her mind. Do not answer flame without understanding the cost. The guard's fingers brushed her sleeve. The mark surged. Heat rolled through her veins like sudden breath through bellows. The torches bent inward, not flickering, bowing. The metal tip of the guard's spear softened as if kissed by invisible fire. The guard jerked back with a curse. What in? Elara stumbled backward. No, she whispered. Stop. But the flame wasn't listening. It wasn't rage. It wasn't vengeance. It was instinct. A defense. The air in the room thickened, shimmering at the edges. The warped lantern on the table began to rise slightly, lifting off wood like gravity had forgotten it. The guards stared, eyes wide now, fear taking shape behind their disbelief. You're marked. One breathed. The lead guard's hand flew to the bell at his belt. Signal. Elara panicked. The flames snapped outward. Not a blast. A wave. Their torches extinguished simultaneously. Darkness slammed into the room. Instantly, like a lid closing over a candle. The guards shouted. Someone grabbed her arm. Elara yanked away, heart hammering. In the darkness, her mark glowed faintly, a betrayal of her location. Then, the shadows in the room moved. Not her shadows, not candle shadows, a second darkness, controlled, cooling. The flame inside her eased, like someone had placed a palm over it. Lucian was not visible, but his presence was a whisper in the air beside her ear. Breathe. Now. Elara inhaled sharply, slowly. The glow on her wrist dimmed. The lantern thudded back to the table. The room steadied. A match flared somewhere. One of the guards relit his torch, shaking hands betraying him. The flame returned, and with it, their stares full of certainty now. Not rumor. Witness. The lead guard backed away a step, voice tight. You're coming with us. Elara's mind raced. If she went, the council would interrogate. They would cut her sleeve. They would see the mark, and they would announce it. And once it became public, Dominion would be forced to respond. Veiled court would move openly. War would not be whispered anymore. It would begin. Elara's voice came out smaller than she intended. I didn't ask for this. The guard lifted his spear. You should have thought of that before you practiced. I wasn't practicing. Save it, he snapped. We've seen enough. Elara's mark pulsed again, like it wanted to answer, like it wanted to burn their fear into ash. But this time, she resisted. She thought of Kael's calm voice. Do not use the mark. She thought of Lucian's cold honesty. Every Dominion bond demands something in return. She exhaled, and the flame did not surge. That alone felt like victory. But it didn't solve the problem. The guards stepped forward together. One grabbed her wrist, and the mark flared again, not in flame this time. In pain. A sharp, sudden sting like a blade pressed into her palm. Elara gasped. It wasn't her pain. It was shared. Miles away, Kael'thorne's ember runes lit violently. He stiffened, hand gripping the stone railing of his balcony. He felt her fear, felt hands on her, felt the mark resisting restraint. His eyes darkened. Elders be damned, he murmured. But even as he moved, the covenant tightened like a chain, not allowing full disobedience. Not yet. So Kael did what powerful men did when forbidden direct action. He sent influence. In the hall of searing accord, a Dominion envoy bowed as Kael's command reached him through flame. And in Darnith, far below the mortal council's line of sight, a single ember symbol ignited on the cobblestones outside Elara's building. A warning, a claim, a promise. The guards saw it through the window, and for the first time, they hesitated, because everyone in Second Chance's city, or in Aethros, knew what that symbol meant. Ember Dominion had taken notice. Act 2 continued, the claim of Ember. The guards froze. All three turned toward the window simultaneously. Outside, glowing faintly against the stone of the street below, an ember sigil burned. Not large, not explosive, just present, a mark carved in flame itself. Even the air beyond the glass felt warmer. The lead guard swallowed. "That's Dominion," one whispered. "No," the second corrected breathlessly. "That's Thorn's crest." Elara didn't need confirmation. She felt the pull through her wrist, like a subtle current under skin. He hadn't come, but he had answered. The mark on her arm pulsed in recognition. Not heat this time, but alignment. The guard still gripping her wrist slowly released his hold. The pain in her palm faded instantly. A quiet knock echoed through the building entrance below. Not desperate, not hurried, measured. Everyone in the room knew what it meant. "Open," a voice called from the street below. Even from inside, the weight of it carried authority. Dominion did not shout. It declared. The lead guard looked at the others. If they detained her now, they risked insulting a Dominion house. If they released her, they admitted mortal jurisdiction weakness. Politics settled over the room like ash. "Stay here," he barked finally, pointing at Elara, as if she might defy the entire continent. The guards hurried downstairs. Elara stood alone in the quiet aftermath. Her pulse thundered. Not from fear this time. From realization. Kyle Thorn had claimed her. Publicly. Aethros would feel it before sunrise. Outside. The Dominion envoy stood beneath the ember crest, dressed in black and bronze scale leather. Trimmed in molten thread embroidery, no weapon visible. None required. His presence alone stilled the murmuring street. The city guard captain approached cautiously. "You are beyond sanctioned border approach," the captain began. The envoy did not bow. He did not threaten. He simply spoke. "House Thorn extends formal notice," he said calmly. "A mortal under Dominion observation resides within this structure." "Observation is not ownership," the captain countered. The envoy's eyes flicked briefly toward the still glowing crest. "Careful." The single word cooled the captain's resistance immediately. "She is under investigation by the Mortal Council," he pressed, "attempting salvage, and she will remain so," the envoy replied, "unless she is publicly accused of heresy or arcane destabilization." A pause. The captain frowned. "And if she is?" The envoy smiled faintly. "Then Dominion will consider that accusation an act of aggression." That settled it. The implication was clear. If the Mortal Council publicly branded Elara as something supernatural, they would trigger treaty review, and no mortal city wished to test that. The captain exhaled sharply. "She is not charged?" "Good." The envoy inclined his head once. "The Dominion appreciates mortal prudence." The ember sigil dimmed slightly. Not gone. Watching upstairs. Elara remained still at the window. Through the faint distortion of glass, she could see the crest flickering against dark cobblestone. Not blazing. Claiming? Her chest tightened. This wasn't protection, it was declaration. She whispered quietly to no one present. "You said you didn't shield what wasn't yours." The air didn't answer, but the mark warmed faintly, as if in quiet contradiction. Moments later, the guards returned, their aggression replaced with brittle politeness. "You are not under arrest," the lead guard said stiffly. "But you will report to council at first bell tomorrow." "I understand," she replied carefully. He hesitated, then lowered his voice slightly. "You should consider leaving the city." "Is that advice?" "It's survival." They exited without another word. The building quieted. Outside, the Dominion envoy remained for several long minutes, ensuring, ensuring the message carried, ensuring witnesses told the right version of tonight. Then he stepped back. The ember sigil extinguished like a breath withdrawn. Darkness returned to the street, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. Meanwhile, the veiled court observes. In shadow, carved halls far north, Lucian stood before tall silver mirrors that reflected not faces, but possible futures. One mirror rippled slightly. A flicker of ember light crossing mortal stone. He exhaled, so he chooses visibility. A faint voice from the shadows responded. Housethorn grows bold. Housethorn grows attached, Lucian corrected, and attachment burns. His scar caught the dim glow of shifting silver. And what will you do? Lucian's expression stilled. I will let flame believe it acts first. And the girl? His answer came softly. She will choose. Shadow around him curled thoughtfully. Be certain her choice remains available. Lucian turned from the mirrors. That, he said, almost to himself, depends on how strongly he pulls. Back in Darnith, Act 2 approaches breaking point. Elara finally sank into a chair. Her legs felt unsteady. Her mind raced faster than flame. She was no longer obscure, no longer invisible. She was marked, observed, claimed, watched by flame and shadow alike, and somehow, still ignorant of what the mark truly meant. The city bells struck midnight. The storm that had threatened since evening finally broke overhead. Rain battered rooftops, lightning split the sky above Darnith, and for a brief moment, Elara thought she saw something in the flash outside her window, a figure on the opposite rooftop, standing against rain as if it were beneath notice, tall, still, watching. Then darkness returned. Her breath caught. Kael? She whispered. No answer, just rain. But the mark pulsed once. Steady, responsive. Act 3. Fracture in flame. Morning came gray and restless. Rumors traveled faster than sunrise by the time Elara reached the mortal council hall at first bell. Whispers had already filled the courtyard, Dominion sigil sighted in Darnith. Archive disturbance. Marked scholar. She kept her sleeve down, kept her breath measured. The stone facade of the council building loomed ahead. Old. Proud. Unaware it stood at the center of something ancient. Inside, the chamber was already crowded. Counselors seated high in carved oak. Observers lining the walls. Guards posted double at entrances. The atmosphere vibrated, not with magic. With anxiety, Elara was summoned forward. Elara Vael, the High Counselor began, you are called to answer for disturbances connected to last evening's report. Disturbances? She repeated carefully. A series of arcane anomalies witnessed in both Archive District and Merchant Quarter. They were choosing their words carefully, not accusing. Not yet. You were present at both locations. I live in Merchant Quarter. That is not the point. It was exactly the point. But politics disguised clarity. The counselor leaned forward slightly. You are aware a Dominion envoy visited your residence. Yes. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Acknowledgement confirmed rumor. And why, he pressed slowly, would Housethorn declare interest in a mortal scholar? Elara chose honesty. I don't know. That was not the whole truth. But it was not a lie. A murmur in the chamber deepened. Then something shifted. Not loud. Subtle. A presence entering the hall without announcement. The back doors did not slam. They opened. Guards stiffened. But did not block. Kael Thorne stepped into the chamber. No cloak this time. No armor designed to intimidate. Regal black, tailored with fine metallic threading at the collar. Controlled, contained. He did not bow. He did not threaten. He simply existed in the room. And every counselor felt smaller. Lord Thorne, the High Counselor said, voice tightening. You arrive without summons. And yet, Kael replied calmly, my arrival is required. His gaze shifted briefly to Elara, not possessive, assessing. She felt it through the mark, a resonance like heat meeting flame. Lucian was already inside, hidden. The shadows behind the carved pillars thickened slightly. No one else seemed to notice. The counselor cleared his throat. This matter concerns a mortal. And a dominion covenant, Kael corrected gently. A ripple of unease moved through the chamber. The mortal, Kael continued, unknowingly activated an ancient manuscript bound to Ember's sigil. Gasps. You admit connection? The counselor pressed. I acknowledge activation. And its implications? Kael's eyes cooled slightly. Are not for mortal council interpretation. The words landed heavy. Before the counselor could respond, a sharp crack echoed from above. Not thunder, not floorboards, glass. The high stained glass windows at the rear of the chamber exploded inward. Chaos erupted. A shadowed figure dropped through shattered light, clad in deep gray armor etched with sigils not dominion, not veiled, unknown. A third faction. The assassin landed within human silence and hurled a blade directly toward Elara. Time slowed. Elara saw the blade. Not metal, dark crystal, charged. The mark on her wrist surged instinctively. But before it could release, Kael moved. Not flamboyant, not explosive, efficient. He crossed the chamber faster than mortal sight. The blade met his forearm. An ember flare erupted where crystal met sigil. Flame swallowed the weapon mid-air, shattering it into sparks. Gasps. Screams. Guards lunging. The assassin retreated instantly toward a column, but the shadows moved before he could. Lucian emerged from darkness like mist, solidified. Silver thread embroidery catching fractured light. His hand lifted lightly, and the floor beneath the assassin twisted. Not cracked, bent. Shadow wrapped the intruder's legs like silent chains. The assassin hissed, mask splitting open to reveal a sigil branded across his throat, the symbol of the obsidian chorus. Ancient separatists, thought extinct. Release him, the assassin snarled toward Elara, not toward Kael. You do not belong to flame. The words struck harder than the blade had. Release? Release from what? Kael's arm still smoldered faintly where the crystal had struck. He looked down at her, urgency visible now, stripped of stoicism. This escalates beyond politics, he said quietly. Lucian stepped closer, scar visible beneath silver light. They do not fear flame alone, Lucian observed. They fear convergence. The assassin laughed through blood. The throne of ash will crack, he rasped. Then, before either immortal could stop him, the assassin bit down on something hidden between teeth. A sharp surge of black mist erupted. His body stiffened, then dissolved into ash. Gone. Silence followed. Counselors stared in frozen horror. Guards held weapons that had never been used. Elara stood trembling, not from fear, from realization. Someone else knew. Someone else believed the mark mattered enough to kill. Kael turned slowly toward the council. This is no longer a mortal inquiry. The High Counselor swallowed. This was an attack on our hall. It was an attempt to prevent bond formation, Lucian corrected quietly. Elara's breath stopped. Bond? The word echoed louder than glass shattering. Kael's jaw tightened. He did not deny it. You cannot remain untrained, he told her quietly. And you cannot remain here, Lucian added. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Dominion interference, veiled interference, mortal sovereignty, treaty violation, but none of that mattered anymore. Elara felt it clearly now. She was no longer being protected. She was being positioned. Her wrist burned, not painful, awake. The prophecy line rose, unbidden in her mind. When flame kneels to shadow, the throne of ash will crack. She looked between them, fire, shadow, both watching her, both calculating, both concerned. The realization chilled her more than the assassin had. "This isn't about war," she said softly. Both immortals went still. "It's about me." Neither corrected her. Outside, the storm that had threatened finally broke in full. Lightning struck somewhere beyond the council hall, and deep in the mountains, a throne carved of obsidian cracked imperceptibly along its base. A fracture unseen, but irreversible. End of episode 1.